This is the Leadership Podcast, and we study leaders. This is episode 477, featuring Sara Sabin, founder of Sara Sabin Executive Coaching, and internationally sought-after commentator for her industry. Thank you for joining us today. This is Jim Vasilopoulos, founder of Rafty Advisors, and this is the Leadership Podcast.
Hey everybody, Jan Rutherford here, founder of Self-Reliant Leadership. Thanks for making us a part of your day as we study leaders. And you can find all our past episodes and a giant catalog of topics at theleadershippodcast.com.
Yes, and this wonderful episode today is being sponsored by Darley. They're a great company. They are trusted by warfighters and firefighters since 1908. Darley is dedicated to equipping our military and first responders with all the essential tools they need for mission success, from fuel and firefighting pumps to drone and tactical solutions. Discover more about this incredible company and the people who serve our nation's heroes at darley.com. That's DARLEY.com. Darley, you serve others, we serve you.
And today our guest is Sara Sabin, and she guides senior executives through the intersection between neuroscience, coaching, and intuition to create exceptional leaders and extraordinary results. She's a master at turning abstract concepts into bite-sized, tangible action steps. Sara, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. Hey, we always ask, what's not in the public bio? What's not out on LinkedIn?
What is not out on LinkedIn? So my LinkedIn profile actually says that I am in London in the UK, but currently I am in Malaga in Spain.
Oh, very nice. So a lot of travel.
Yes, I love traveling and travel a lot. It's a fun game for my clients, spot where Sara is on any given day.
I travel a lot and people often ask me, so let me ask you this. You have to pick one place to go on vacation. You can only go on vacation to one place for the rest of your life. Where would that be?
Oh my God, I don't know. I'm going to go with my current favorite country, which is Portugal. I'm just going to go with that.
Oh, yeah. The Algarve? Down south?
No, I love Lisbon upwards, so kind of central Portugal up to northern Portugal where you've got Porto.
Oh, yeah. My perfect would be Ireland for the people and Portugal for everything else. Yeah.
I'm actually with you on that. I agree.
No Greece? I'm shocked.
No Greece, Jim. She didn't say Greece.
Oh.
Greece is nice too, though. I'm not just saying that. It really is.
Yeah. So let's dig into this. Big topic these days, of course. You know, you can't even listen to a newscast without hearing something about artificial intelligence. What made you stop and think AI might actually be making us lazy? Was there a moment or an observation that sparked this insight?
So that's a really good question. I don't think there was one lightning moment where I thought this is making people lazy. It was kind of like a slow creep of observing what was going on around me, observing what was going on in companies, observing what leaders were saying. And actually, a lot of my observations were validated by a piece of MIT research that came out a few months ago now. But I started noticing more and more how things were starting to look the same. So marketing starting to look the same, thought leadership pieces starting to look the same, marketing emails starting to look the same, designs. And I was just noticing this more and more and more. And actually, it's interesting because the MIT research is based on essays that kids were writing at school. And again, what they noticed with those that used AI to write those essays were that they were looking homogenous.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. It's easy to do. You're like, well, I've got this great tool here. Why wouldn't I use it? Everyone's using it, so why not? Well, just because it's easy to do doesn't mean that it doesn't have drawbacks. to it. So every positive has negatives to it as well, and every negative has positives. So if you want to be best in class, you're not going to get there by laziness. You're going to get there by using your brain, stretching your comfort zone, etc.
Yeah, I just came from a lunch where we were talking about this with a client, and we were talking about, gosh, there's drawbacks, and you need to be careful. You need to exercise judgment, but it's almost like you apologize when you use AI, like you feel like you were cheating. But what's the difference? And this is a question we talked about at lunch. I'd be interested in your thought. What's the difference in getting AI to help you, or if you had a subordinate and you're like, hey, Jerry, write this memo for me, and then I come over and I edit it and send it out. I mean, what's the difference in that? Because then I get to do what only I can do and work on higher level, higher value stuff than some of the minutia.
So AI is actually really good for working on the minutia. So I'm not taking away the fact that AI is useful for certain things, but for things that actually require critical thinking, strategic thinking, innovative thinking, if you're using AI, you're taking away an opportunity from yourself for learning, for development, for literally firing up the parts of your brain that are going to be really useful for you to be an excellent leader in the future. But to take the scenario that you've just said, there's a difference between getting AI to do something, whatever this memo happens to be, versus having an employee or someone in the team do it for you. Because if that person in the team is doing it for you, you're giving them the opportunity to expand in a certain area and to use their brain rather than cutting them out and going straight to the use of AI. Now, again, that is if the task that you give the employee is something that's going to stretch them. If it is something manual, completely get it. Data entry makes sense that AI would help with that. We're talking specifically about things that involve creativity, strategy, brilliance.
Yeah. This is so interesting. And it actually dovetails in a conversation, of course, I was having yesterday with a friend and client of mine. And he was at one point lamenting that he's got 2 kids in college and, they're pushing back against using AI and having the kids use AI. And yet part of him is like, I get that. At the same time, we should be teaching kids how to use AI properly. And so we were having this conversation and it came to something you mentioned earlier, which was critical thinking. And I thought, you know, AI can be a tool to augment and improve critical thinking, but it can't replace critical thinking. And when we have it replace our critical thinking, that's when we really kind of get into trouble. And I think that's why, in some ways, universities, and this is a conversation we've had through a lot of these podcasts, a lot of people we've spoken to have said, like, hey, we need to get back to more of a liberal arts education where we're teaching philosophy, we're teaching kind of, how to think instead of what to think. And maybe that's why there's a pushback. I know you've raised the provocative question whether we're outsourcing too much of our thinking to machines. Give us your perspective on this. Tell us what you're hearing, what you think, and what's at stake.
So I'm going to actually first come back on something that you said, which is AI can be used as a complement to critical thinking, but it shouldn't replace it. So actually, preliminary findings in this MIT research I referred to suggested that if AI is used after you've done the critical thinking part, it actually helps to consolidate your learning and memory. So in that way, it's actually helpful. The problem is the replacement. But if we're talking about replacement of critical thinking, I mean, how much time have you got about what's at stake there? But just a few things. Number one, you are impairing your ability to stand out because, as I mentioned before, you start to look the same as everyone else. So that diversity of thought and originality starts to get lost. The other thing about open source AI, it takes what is publicly available, and it doesn't matter whether that information is correct or incorrect or good advice or bad advice. It's just taking what is there. And that's a problem if people don't critically think and fact check the advice that they're getting. So again, if you're inclined towards laziness, you might not do that. The other thing, if you're going to open source AI to get information, let's say you were going to download a marketing strategy, for example, you're not going to get best in class marketing strategy, because no company that has developed an innovative marketing strategy is going to be like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put this on open source AI so that Joe Blogs over there can download my marketing strategy that absolutely kills the market, right? So what you're guessing, you don't even know if it's from sources that you can actually trust. And a lot of bigger companies actually don't allow open source AI to be used at work for the reason that I mentioned, because they don't really want company secrets to end up on there for anyone to come on and access them. The other thing is that, again, because of some of the reasons I've said, it's not necessarily a way to predict future trends. So it talks about what is and what currently exists based on the information that's currently available publicly. But when it comes to predicting the realm of the future, that's where intuition and critical thinking really come to the fore. If we look at someone like Steve Jobs, he knew what people wanted before they knew that they wanted it. And AI in its current form, at least open source AI, is unlikely to have that kind of predictive tendency. And then the final thing I'm going to say is, yes, everyone should know how to use AI, but most people don't know how to use it well. And if they were to put all of their eggs in one basket, let's put it that way, and say, right, I'm going to take all of my brain power and I'm going to learn how to use AI really well. Let's say everyone decided to do that and they neglected all other skills. Well, again, you've got people that are doing things in a homogenous way. So originality and diversity, again, starts to get lost. So that's just some of the things that are at stake if we just blanketly use something without thinking through how can we mitigate the consequences of some of these problems.
I think it's interesting. I'm kind of curious, if we harken back to the early days of the internet, there was this serendipity that kind of happened that was similar to what it was like to read the newspaper, where you read an article you were interested in, but then you kind of read one that was next to it because it caught your eye. And in the beginning of the internet, you'd start, reading something about, financial analysis, and, an hour or two later, you're reading about venomous spiders in the Amazon. And so, it was just this crazy kind of, it empowered creativity.
Yeah, it was a rabbit hole.
Yeah. And it's gone. Okay. And I am not seeing the same thing like with the online tools for AI. I'm seeing like they laser focus you and focus you and focus you more almost immediately. There's absolutely no serendipity. And so, I just think about like, how does that affect, how we think? We're looking through straws too much is what I'm feeling.
Yes, I agree with you. In some ways, laser focus is good if you have critically decided and made a decision that we are going to laser focus on this thing for these specific sets of reasons. But laser focusing because you're led there because AI is taking you down a path that it thinks you want to go down because of the questions that you've been asking is something different, because that starts to close down your mind. And our mind learns and evolves by seeing challenges and different perspectives. And unfortunately, there's less and less of that now, because even when we're on social media, it shows us more of what it thinks we want to see and less of the things that we don't want to see. And unfortunately, the tendency is now, when people see something that they don't want to see, is to blow up, have an emotional trigger about it, and not stop to listen. And that's actually a real problem for learning, because even if you don't agree with something, you can always learn from someone that has an opposing viewpoint to you.
Mhm. Let's take this back to the human element. We're talking about creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence. What's the most important lesson you've learned about yourself that continues to shape how you coach and lead others today?
That leadership is an inside job.
Hmm.
That kind of sounds like it could be a mafia related thing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, it's about your internal world. And mastering the internal world is going to make you an exceptional leader. So just to give you an example of that, every core leadership skill that exists has an internal component to it that contributes to you being excellent at it. So, for example, we all want to be better communicators, and exceptional leaders want to be exceptional communicators. Well, you can't be an exceptional communicator just by reading a book and being like, wow, okay, I've read this book now. That's the end of the story. I'm just going to apply this strategy. Because the internal, or one of the internal components to that, is emotional regulation. If you cannot control your emotions, and I don't just mean if you tend to lose your temper at work, that's external showing of emotions, but if you are internally emotional, which we all are, especially the people that say to me, Sarah, I'm not emotional. Those are usually the people that have a lot of emotions going on internally. Until you are in a place of emotional neutrality, you cannot be an excellent communicator, period, because it will come across, that emotion will come across in the way that you communicate. Creativity, another leadership skill. That could be creativity in the artistic sense, or it could be creative problem solving. Again, one of the internal components to that is intuition and developing the intuitive brain. So what I found is that strategies are great, but unless you understand the internal pieces that drive the external strategy and make it work, then you won't ever get to the realm of being exceptional.
Yeah. So we had Gino Wickman on the show, EOS traction, and he had a post today that caught my eye, and it was, pay attention to when you get triggered. It's pointing to a layer that you need to shed. And he went on to say in this post, I mean, it's really about self-regulation, like all the stuff that just makes you mad, like, oh, you need to pay attention to this. And I thought, that was like the best advice I've ever heard concisely regarding self-regulation, which is hard for all of us. I think it's, to not, I mean, we're emotional creatures, but not to be emotional, and to regulate our emotions. What's your thoughts on that?
So I 100% agree with him, and I'm going to nuance what he said a little bit.
Okay.
So there can be this tendency to hear, I use, for example, the terms emotional mastery, emotional regulation. There can be the tendency to hear that and think that it's about transcending emotion.
Mm,
We can't transcend emotion.
Yep.
We are all human. Even psychopaths who lack empathy have emotion because they feel anger and they want to take revenge and all of this. So it's still emotionally driven. What I'm talking about is the ability to, and this is where what you read is very true, the ability to acknowledge emotions, accept them, especially when you're triggered, because if you're triggered, there's something you should look at, because it's you that is triggering yourself. It's not the other person who annoyed you, right? There's a tendency to be like, oh, this person is so annoying. That person couldn't annoy you unless there was something in you that was being triggered by whatever it is that they're saying or doing. So it's the ability to acknowledge and accept that and get back to a state of neutrality. And the quicker that you can do that, the better that you will be able to perform rationally, critically, intuitively. Now, I want to also say that this applies even if you're really elated, because you don't make good decisions if you're depressed. I think we can probably agree on that. But you also don't make good decisions when you're overly excited or elated, because you're like so excited about everything that you're not looking at the risks involved in something.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not saying don't feel any form of joy, but a calm, peaceful tranquility is actually much more conducive to making good decisions than aiming towards excitement or elation.
Yeah. And now I know I'm gonna have to figure out why not having headphones on airplanes and at the airport drives me nuts. I'm gonna have to dig into that one. But in the meantime, we're enjoying this really interesting discussion with Sara today because we have a great sponsor, and that's Darley, a family-owned business based in the Midwest. They've been around for over 100 years, trusted partner of the U.S. military and first responders. Their equipment is mission critical for innovative firefighting and equipping our heroes for success. And you can learn more about this great company and their people at darley.com. That's DARLEY.com.
Yeah. Thanks, Jan. And thank you to Darley. Of course, I'm geeking out today because we're combining so many of the things I love to talk about, whether it's neuroscience or intuition and leadership and all this confluence of stuff that kind of like I just find so fascinating. And I love the talk of emotions and how we need to accept them and understand them instead of, suppress them. I think that is something a lot of people get wrong. But as we combine all these things together in this soup that makes us human, is there any insight that you've learned that kind of surprises you about, how leaders function, how they can change, how they can improve themselves, and how, if possible, with neuroscience, we can kind of rewire the way we approach some of the things we need to be able to do?
So basically, I'm gonna go into the why first, like the why of why you should pay attention to what's going on in your thoughts and belief systems. Because again, I just want to ground this in why it's practical to do so for your performance. Quite simply because your habitual thought patterns influence your belief systems, which determine your actions and behaviors, and therefore your results. Now, the surprising insight, well, it's not surprising to me, but it's sometimes surprising, quite often surprising to the people I work with, is that it's more easy to change those than you might think. And when you do so, what happens is your confidence goes up because you're changing these old, outdated patterns of thinking and belief systems. And even before you start communicating, this goes into the way that you present yourself. It goes into your non-verbal communication, and people start to pick up on that. So how does one start to do that? It's quite simply a little bit of effort every day. So brain rewiring exercises are simple. They're targeted to whatever it is that particular person needs to work on or most needs to change, that's going to create the biggest shifts in their life. And a few minutes a day makes a difference. So it's a compounding effect. The same way that if you were to invest money in an ETF or the stock market, and you leave it in there and you keep adding to it, it compounds over time. And suddenly you're like, wow, I've got this massive pot of money. It's the same kind of thing with brain work. A little bit of effort every day goes a long way. And I I find that people can be surprised by the simplicity of it.
I love this. And, one of the things I'm curious about, especially when people, let's say, put together a marketing campaign, they often can't wait for the results before they say, like, we got to change it. And, people always want immediate results, whether it's a weight loss routine or something else. So, like, I'm not seeing the benefit. I got to do something different. And so with these kind of compounding changes in mindset that allow us to make improvements, and I'm buying it 100%. How do we help people from not giving up on the investment or changing their mind too much so that it's not really compounding? You're just starting over at zero again with some new idea or some new thing. Like, what is the key to staying like committed to that process?
So the good thing about the exercises that I give to my clients specifically is that they will see results quickly. When I say they'll see results quickly, will their whole lives radically change in 20 days? No, probably not. But what they will start seeing is tangible little pieces of evidence that what they're doing is starting to change things. So an example of that is, let's take the weight loss example. A lot of weight gain is because people actually beat themselves up. And like this becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Oh my God, I'm going to weigh myself. I put on weight. Now I'm going to freak out, have a whole load of negative thoughts about it. What happens? You start to emotionally eat. So it becomes this whole negative chain. With training your brain, you actually start to have more positive thoughts. And it was interesting because I don't kind of work with people on weight loss, but it's an anecdotal story of one of my clients. She said to me, I had a thought go through my brain this morning that I should weigh myself. And then I just thought, I don't need to. I look great. I was like, great, that's it. This is the kind of things that I am training people to pick up on. These little pieces of evidence that actually what they're doing is working. Because you're right, if people are doing something for years and years, or actually nowadays, if they're doing it for a week and it's not working, they are apt to change too soon, put it that way. But built into this system is training people to pick up on tangible evidence that what they're doing is working.
Yeah, I want to switch gears. You had an article in Medium that I think it looked like you spent a lot of time thinking about, was the biggest myths about intuition or gut. I'd love to hear those.
So there were 6 myths, the first of which is the most common one that I hear when I talk about intuition with people, and they're like, oh yeah, I follow my gut. And I'm like, great, that may or may not be your intuition. And that's the problem. Emotion is not the same as intuition. And unfortunately, when we get a gut feeling, it might actually be emotion that we're feeling and not intuition. So you might say to me, well, Sarah, how do we know the difference? Well, intuition is just a very clear, emotionless flash of something, whether it's a way of solving a problem, whether it's an action step you need to take, whatever it is. You may later have an emotion related to the flash. You might be like, I don't want to do that. and start getting emotional about it. But the initial part that you received is the intuition, because it was clear and emotionless. But it is difficult to tell the difference at first unless you know what you're looking for. So that's one of the top myths that I like to bust about intuition. Great gut feeling, maybe intuition, but it may not be.
Yeah. You've probably heard, I mean, tell me how what you're saying relates to the concept when you're asked to do something. Something comes up and you've got an opportunity. It might be to go to a party, it might be to take on a project, it might be, a guy's weekend, a gal's weekend, whatever. There's the whole thing of it's either a hell yeah or it's a hell no. Like, yeah. Like if you're not like super enthusiastic, then it's a no. Like a day from now, it's not going to be exciting to you. How does that something like that apply to the whole idea of emotion versus intuition? And is there any is there any neuroscience behind either it's a hell yeah or it's a hell no?
So the neuroscience of intuition is basically when our brain is offline, so when we're not actively thinking, that's when we're most susceptible for intuitive insights to come to us, because there are connections being made in a region of the brain called default mode network, which we're not even conscious of. They're just running in the background. Now, again, with that kind of response, hell yes or hell no, it may be that your brain has put together a load of things in the background. You're like, yes, I'm just like in that. Or again, it may be emotion. And the thing is, if something feels good, it doesn't necessarily mean it is good. So again, that hell yes may be an impulse. Like, for example, you're like, God, I've just got to eat McDonald's today. There is, yes, I agree with that. But let's say that was your impulse for today and you were like, hell yes, I really feel like it. Again, this is not something that's going to be good for you long term. If you're actually used to healthy eating and you eat it, you may feel sick. So again, when you're having this hell yes, hell no response, it's best to actually wait a little bit and ask, is this an emotional response or an impulsive response? Or is this something that just comes to me as the right thing to do when I'm kind of switched off and not really thinking about it?
Yeah. This could be, well, not could be. This is a rabbit hole, but I'll just throw it out there. It kind of where this makes me go is the difference in fun 1 and fun 2. Are you familiar with that, Sarah?
No.
So fun 1 is like riding a carousel, going on a roller coaster, going to a movie. It's fun. But afterwards, it's like, oh, that was over quick. Fun 2, my best analogy is climb a mountain. While you're climbing the mountain, you are not having fun. I don't care who you are. It's hard. You're like, what am I doing here? And then when you're done, you're like, that was cool. Look at the pictures we've got. That's fun too. And it seems like a lot of things in life that are worth doing are kind of the fun too stuff. The things that require discipline and sacrifice, the things that are hard, but you're thinking longer term about the benefits of that rather than, live in the moment type of stuff.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. A lot of the things that are good for us, there's a kind of, let's say, a learning curve to get there. Like if you're taking up a new hobby, you might need to put some effort into it before you really start loving it. But when you love it, you really love it and you keep doing it. Now, that's not to say, and I don't want to take away from fun 1, because fun 1 does serve a purpose as well. Sometimes Our bodies just need to relax and switch off. And Fun One could be a good way of doing that, because it's actually profitable to us in the short term and long term that we give ourselves this treat or reward for basically just living life every day, to be honest, like
Surviving.
battling through it. So I don't want to take away from that, but yes, intuition will definitely lead you towards the hard things as well.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to talk a little bit about like this, heck yeah, heck no kind of impulse, like the bookends of like where we could be. And like anything, like the answer is usually in the middle somewhere. But like right now, if we take a look at our discussion on AI, it's, oh my gosh, this is going to solve all the world's problems. We're going to cure cancer. This is going to be great. We're not even going to have to work anymore. We're going to have so much leisure time. I mean, people have said this before with other technologies. On the other hand, it's, we are going to be battling the machines like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Neo in the Matrix. Okay. The answer's in the middle somewhere. I'm sure of it. But with that, I mean, we've shown very little restraint, and how we're dipping our toe into this right now. You know, fast forward 10 years. What are some of the things that concern you? And what might the workplace look like ideally, but what do you think it's really going to be like?
Okay, so my worst case scenario is not kind of Terminator situation. So I saw that great movie, love it, but not how I see things happening. My worst case scenario is basically that everyone starts to look the same. I don't just mean physically, but also mentally. Everyone starts to have the same set of skills. Everyone starts to think in the same way. And basically, if that happens, we've lost the ability to think and create and innovate. Now, the smart people will see that coming as a possibility. And unfortunately, that leaves people much more open to manipulation. Because if everyone puts all of their effort into learning AI and procedurally integrating AI, and everyone does that, but a small group of people like, well, we're still going to think critically, and these people are going to be easily manipulatable now because they've lost the ability to think for themselves. So that is kind of, for me, the worst case scenario. Everything comes at a price. So AI and learning to optimize use of it replaces some of the effortful cognitive processes that are required for thinking independently. And this creates a debt. So this deferred mental effort in the short term has a long-term cost, just as laziness in general does, right? So if you just sit on the couch and eat whatever, and you're like, well, I've got this heat pad, and if I just put it on, someone told me I'll lose weight. That will have a long-term cost eventually. Another good example of that, Ozempic. No one knows what the long-term consequences of taking the shortcut to lose weight are going to be. There's early indicators, but again, people don't tend to think of the long-term consequences. They tend to think of the short term. So for me, that was going to be the worst case scenario. But good news is I don't really see that happening because I'm more on the optimistic side. So what I'd like to see is a human AI partnership. So what that looks like is basically humans doing what they are potentially really good at, working in their zone of genius, working strategically, thinking, creating, innovating with the support of AI. And I see it as being far more advanced AI than we have now. So I actually work with one of my clients, and he is in the AI innovation space, and he has an AI version of himself. Very, very good. His AI version speaks multiple languages as well, which is great. And the AI version just takes care of all the simple stuff. So it can do simple interactions with people. And that frees him up to do more of what he's really good at. And that is the potential benefit in the future, is that we won't be bogged down in all this boring, admin-y, manual, repetitive stuff. We get to experience more of what we're really good at and bring more of our gifts into the workplace. So I guess that would be my best case scenario.
Yeah, this is one I think about a lot. And I guess if you're biasing a little bit towards the positive, I'm biasing a little bit more towards the negative. Not like Terminator stuff, but I think the thing that concerns me is that I believe that, the digital divide that the internet kind of created between people who had access to all this information and people who didn't, I think it's greater, because it won't be whether you have access or not. It'll be whether you have the critical thinking skills to actually have it work with you in a partnership, or whether it's manipulating you because you have turned off too many elements of your, of your thinking process. And, I think my big concern stems not from AI taking over the world, but like, I think there's plenty of historical examples where when people stop thinking and they get into that groupthink mode, because we're going to get into that homogenous kind of like thinking, bad things tend to happen. And so that's how I handicap the situation. I mean, I don't want to be negative or anything like that, but that's how I'm seeing it. I don't know. What do you think? Give me some hope.
Jim, I 100% agree that that is a possibility. And actually, people should see it as a possibility, because unless we do something about it now, it's more likely to become a probability in 10 years than it is a possibility. Because if we don't encourage critical thinking now, then yes, we are walking and marching towards that future possibility. And I mean, I saw something shocking recently. So I was commenting for an article on AI for a publication in Australia. And I mean, some of the things I've talked about today, but the opposing view on it was, well, we don't need to teach kids to read or write because AI is going to do that for them. And I will say I actually temporarily stopped and swore at the computer. It's just like, wait, what are you talking about? This is exactly the kind of thinking that will get us to this future reality that you're outlining now.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, this has been a really great conversation. I'm sure you've stirred up a lot of thoughts with our listeners that you have with Jim and I. Well, how would you like to close this out? As a challenge or a summary? What would you like to say before we go?
So actually, I think something to say that draws quite a lot of what we've been talking about together, like emotions and all the AI part as well. Lean into discomfort. Don't get lazy. So use your emotional triggers and your resistance to things to learn something. Be cognizant of the fact that if you want to compete, you need to be having a sharp brain and developing that brain and not getting lazy. And the only way you can do that is by embracing and leaning into discomfort.
You said something real quick. You said if you need to compete.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Freudian slip.
Well, no, I'm just wondering. I mean, who doesn't need to compete? I mean, again, if we're living in the wild and tribes have 150, I mean,
Yeah.
you're competing
I'm
with something.
I'm going to rephrase that as if you want to compete, because it's a choice. You can
Yeah.
take the lazy route now, short-term benefit for the long-term cost, or you can be like, I'm going to make the effort now because it's going to pay off in the future. So thank you for catching me on that. Yes, it's if you want to compete.
Yeah. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation today.
Yes. Lovely discussion. Thank you, Sarah. And for our listeners, that's all we have for you this week. So we'll include ways for you to connect with Sarah in our show notes. So make sure to visit us at theleadershippodcast.com. And remember, by far, the greatest danger of artificial intelligence is that people conclude too early that they understand it. Eliezer Yudkowsky. It's a wrap.
Thanks for listening to the Leadership Podcast. To listen to more shows or to access the books and content discussed on this show, be sure to visit theleadershippodcast.com. The material in this podcast is copyright by Rafti Advisors and Self-Reliant Leadership and must have written approval before commercial application.